Good evening, baseball fans. Well, this is it. We're down to the final week of the MLB season. After these final 7 days, numbers will be thinned out. The final playoff spots will be locked in, and positioning will be settled. And we had a couple more clinchings this past week. The Yankees clinched a spot in the postseason. We did that with the win on Saturday over the Blue Jays, 5-1, with the magic number being one. We took the spot, and the Diamondbacks clinched earlier today. Well, actually, they clinched when the Cardinals and Brewers both lost, but the Diamondbacks win gave them home field in the National League wildcard game. Of course, the Dodgers clinched the West. Of course, the Dodgers clinched the West on this past Friday, finally. And so, so that's settled. There's still two spots left in the National League. The NL Central is still up for grabs. No one in that division has clinched a postseason berth. But though the Cubs are closing in on winning the Central Division, they took 3 out of 4. They took 3 out of 4 in Milwaukee. So entering the final week, the Cubs' magic number to clinch a postseason berth in the NL Central is 2. It's just 2, and they can do it. And they can do it according to this. They can clinch a spot as early as Tuesday. The Cubs are in St. Louis. And the Brewers host the Reds for a series. And if the Cubs win, the Brewers lose. The Cubs will clinch the Central for the second straight year. Meanwhile, the hopes of the Brewers and Cardinals for postseason appearances um, will definitely fade, but they'll still have a shot at that last wild card. At the moment, the Rockies lead the Brewers by 2 games for that last wild card position, and it's going to be quite an interesting race. Game 163 is still possible. I mean, it's very close. It's not like Colorado's running away with it. It's not like the American League. What used to be a close, bunched up league, now Minnesota is finally capitalizing on the bubble teams losing. And entering the final week, the Twins have a 4.5 game lead over the Angels. It was much smaller. It was much smaller over a lot of teams, but Minnesota has finally run away from that pack, and now they have a dominant lead entering the final 7 days of the season. Um, the Twins, the Twins lead is 4.5, and the Twins' magic number to clinch the final playoff spot is 3, which means they can get it as early. They can clinch the spot as early as Wednesday. Twins have to play the Indians, so they got to play the Indians in Cleveland. The Angels head to the Windy City to face the White Sox, and the Royals, who barely have an outside shot, they have a makeup game with the Yankees coming up. Speaking of the Yankees, the AL East isn't over. Well, isn't officially over yet, but let's face facts here. Our chances of winning the East are fading fast. It's all here in this updated app, and Boston has a commanding 5 game lead with 7 to go. So a lot has to happen. A lot has to happen. Boston basically can't win no more than 1 game. We need to practically win out. We're going to be looking at. Otherwise, we're going to be looking at most likely hosting the wild card game. The Yankees lead over the Twins is 4.5, and we clinched the season series when we swept them in at home. So all we have to do is win our next 2 games, and we'll get that game. We'll get that wild card game at home, like we did 2 years ago. I just hope that we don't screw things up and actually score some runs and win this time. That's all I do. I say the Yankees just win the wild card game. The rest will handle itself. But um, yeah, it looks like a wild card is in the Yankees. Was in the cards, no pun intended, for the Yankees. But all that means is just one extra playoff game we'll have to win to get to number 28. But so, yeah, some positions have settled. Nothing, no positions are settled yet in the American League. The Indians have a 2.5 game lead over Houston for home field in the entire American League. And but in the National League, it's official. The Dodgers and the Nationals will have home field in a division series, but only one team can get home field throughout, and that's still up for grabs. Whoever wins the Central will have to travel on the road against the worst of the two teams. And of course, Arizona will have the wild card game at home against either Colorado, Milwaukee, or St. Louis. All other teams are eliminated. All other teams are eliminated, and in the American League, there's still four bubble teams, but the rest are gone, and that includes the Mariners. That includes the Mariners. The Mariners got officially eliminated earlier today. The Mariners have not reached the postseason since their magical 116 win season in 2001. And even that year, they didn't go to the World Series. They were beaten by the Yankees in 6 games at ALCS and have not played a postseason game since. That is the longest current playoff drought in baseball, 16 seasons, and it's the second longest current drought in the four North American professional sports. Only the Bills have had a longer drought. They have not been. They are the only team in the four major sports that have not reached the postseason in the 20th century, because their last postseason came in '99. And yeah, so the teams, Tampa Bay's elimination number is 1, so they're going to be next. Um, at the most, about three teams could be eliminated in the same day, probably on Tuesday most likely. But as usual, the last week of the season, it's all going to shape things up. Okay, and as I said, as I said before, Arizona's going to host a wild card game, and it looks like the American wild card game is destined to be Twins heading to the Bronx to face the Yankees. But and it all starts next Tuesday, October 3rd. The season ends next Sunday, the 1st. The postseason begins with the American League wild card game Tuesday the 3rd. The National League games on the 4th, that Wednesday, and the division series starts that Thursday, October 5th. And it's going to be a fun and crazy month. But to get to October, we have to get through this final week of the season first. So with that, I will end this recap of the postseason races, which are almost over, heading to this final week of the season. Um, I'll be back either tomorrow night or Tuesday morning to recap Week 3 of the NFL season, and I'll have the baseball recap. Next Sunday. Actually, next Sunday will be a baseball recap and a bit of a postseason preview. So, with that, I say enjoy the final week of the season. Enjoy the final week of the season. Good night, and go Yankees.